Well, how are you today? I'm Pastor Dan, and this is God Talk. I hope you've been with us for a while. But there's a lot of messages and a lot of channels here at LLBN, and if you have found God Talk, then I'm happy. And if you ever miss it, you can always go online to llbn.tv and be a part of that. So thank you for being a part of LLBN. I'm in a little different part of the studio now. They have more than one, and one is being remodeled. Another one is being built, a huge new project where they're putting this whole new building together. And we're over in Studio 3 today, and I just happy we can still be with you, God Talk. I hope this will be okay. This is something I preach because as I tape this, this is close to 4th of July weekend. And I did a worship over at my mother's villa, which is 2 minutes down the road. And you had to go around 6 times and speak outside because they're locked down. So you would have a little microphone, and here they're waving at you from their windows, and you preach to the wing from the... And I had to do that 6 times. And then my brother is a pastor down in San Diego, El Cajon area, California here. And he wanted a message for 4th of July. We're 4 brothers, 3 of us are preachers. So we put a message together, each one doing something. So I want to say that here, sermon on freedom. If you don't know this, we grew up overseas. My family went, my first memories of, are really getting ready to go to Thailand. So I was about 3.5, 4, we began to have to go get shots. I remember getting the shots, and I remember getting on the boat. I remember 4 years old getting on the boat. I remember a lot of the 6 weeks on the ship over there. We were a simple freighter. I remember the train up in Chiang Mai, the little tricycles that we took our stuff over to this house, simple house, $15 a month, 63 years ago. Snakes, simple, we'd no hot water. For years, we had to bathe outside by the well many times. Kitchen was outside, primitive. My parents had to take the boxes that where our beds came in, and those became our closets for a long time. That's all we had. Simple. After 4 years, we came back to America. Now, I had a little bit of memory. My brothers, of course, had no idea. One born over there. Now we're coming back. I think we left Japan, wherever it was, and we all fought over who got to sit at the window, because only 2 of us were going to be able to see California when we got to the U.S. So I'm the oldest one, so I got one of the windows. And you fly over and we see California coast. I don't remember if we landed in Los Angeles or San Francisco. We did this, of course, several times. And we would see our grandparents from both sides. There's no Skyping, there's no texting, no email, no nothing. We wrote letters that would take a week or 2 or 3 to get there. No phone. See our grandparents. They took us to a restaurant, America. And my grandmother had gone somewhere and picked this huge bowl of strawberries. And they brought stuff for strawberry shortcake. We'd never heard of it. Never had strawberries, no idea. So we weren't going to eat any. My mother said, no, you have to try. So we tried strawberry shortcake. I love strawberry shortcake now. It's a symbol of America. When we first got here. There are other symbols of America to all of us who have come. Freeways, supermarkets. Now other countries have those things, but they didn't back then. We loved California, loved America. And you can drive around and you go to Grand Canyon or Half Dome in Yosemite, all over great, beautiful places that are America. Iconic symbols, Empire State Building, Golden Gate Bridge. I've gone scuba diving in Florida Keys, and I've gone up to Alaska and Anchorage and Mount Denali. It's America. But you ask anybody why they come to America, what they love about America, that isn't what they say at first. Yeah, the freeways, all that's nice. It's freedom. You have a chance to do what you want to do with your life. We have the most freedom to give yourself opportunity. It was our country where they gave us a statue that said Statue of Liberty. I heard Dennis Prager say the other day, we are the freest country in the world. People want to go and they want to leave their country. Where do they want to come? You ask anybody, from the U.S. More Africans have come to America than came in slavery. It's interesting. Slavery was terrible. But you ask black Africans now, where do you want to go? Come to the U.S. Symbol of freedom. So let's talk a little bit about God and freedom. If you had to choose one word after God is love, you would probably say God is a God of freedom. Really important to God, gave us free choice, made us in His own image, free choice. He gave us every tree in the world. Don't eat this one. I thought you were a God of freedom. I thought we were free. Yeah, you're free. But you'll be sorry if you eat of that tree. You'll die. Please be careful. It's up to you. Your choice. Famous picture of Jesus knocking on the door. Behold, if any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in. It's free choice. Prodigal son, maybe the favorite story Jesus told about his father. The boy wants to go. I want my money now. I'm going to leave. It's up to you. You want to go. God is a God of freedom. He wants a cheerful giver. I was talking to someone yesterday. He had to do something really hard. And I said, still a cheerful giver? He said, yes, Pastor Dan. Still cheerful. I was in Chicago in my church at Hinsdale when I found out that one of my teachers was about to be fired. We had a lot of church employees. I had a big church there in Chicago. She was going through a divorce. Her husband had cleaned out their account so she couldn't pay tithe and offerings. They used my church books in order to find out that she hadn't paid tithe. I got upset. I told the conference they couldn't look at our books anymore. And they said, they're not your books, they're our books. Oh, brother. So I wrote a paper, Bible and Ellen White. I took it, met with the conference committee. I said, I don't agree with this. God doesn't want anybody to give any money out of coercion because they have to lose their job. God wants cheerful giver. God wants from the heart. God is a God of freedom. I won't tell you all the blows of the story, but anyway, it took me 2 meetings, but unanimous vote. I hope it's still their policy. It is the policy at our conference. You can't check. I believe in paying tithe. I believe in giving, but I believe in giving from a free heart. 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, where the Spirit is, there is freedom. So if you do anything that doesn't feel free, then you're not doing it because of the Holy Spirit. That always feels free. You're doing it for people. You're doing it for the clothes police in the church, the food police, the music police, the church standards police, the theology police. You're not doing it for God. Not doing it for freedom, out of a free heart, because you believe it. It makes sense to you. God doesn't want it. What he said, I don't want your sacrifices. Don't bring that to me. Yeah, it was his idea. But if you bring it without a free heart, I want a broken heart, broken spirit. Don't bring it to me. God is a God of freedom. Jesus says, I called you to freedom. I came down to set the captives free, he says in Luke 4. I will set you free. The Son of Man sets you free indeed. Has to feel free. I had to go through all of my beliefs at one point and make sure that nothing was not from freedom. Not doing it for the church elders, not doing it for the conference, not doing it for the headquarters, not doing it for my parents, not doing it for how people will think about me, doing it for freedom and God. If it doesn't feel freedom, God doesn't want it. You feel free? Is it all from your heart? It's freedom. If it doesn't feel free, like legalism, it's not free. Doing it because I have to, doing it because I'm climbing this ladder to get to heaven, not free. Well, if we want to be free, then we have to fight for other people's freedom. You and I may be free, someone else is not free. Slavery. William Wilberforce fought for 50 years to fight for freedom. I've been to the castle in Ghana, Elmina Castle. Young black man gave us a tour, showed us where the slaves came, brought them from the inner part of the country. Terrible. You're chained. You don't know where you're going. You can't talk the language. You don't know what's going on. You're just chains. Put them in the bottom of a boat, smashed together. Terrible air, terrible physical space, and chains. Get to the Caribbean or to the U.S. or England or somewhere. I don't know how many few 100,000 came to America, millions other places. Someone had to fight for freedom. And then when you had the freedom from slavery, then you have the freedom to vote. Freedom to live the way you want. We're still fighting some of those things. Hilton and I watched last night women's suffrage. These ladies that marched and fighting just to have a right to vote. Here we are, thousands of years of human history, and women can't vote. Men stood on the side of the parade and spitting and jeering. So we went online to find out, when did we get it? 1920. Not that long ago, 100 years ago. But somebody had to fight, someone had to vote, men had to vote in order to give women the right to vote. Freedom. Are there people that you and I still need to be fighting for? I don't know if it's a good idea to go down and march and fight. I'm not for protests that turn into looting and violence. That's terrible. But I give respect to the people that said, I'm going to fight for these people's freedom. I'm going to fight that we stop damaging people and police tactics. I'm going to fight for this. Sorry about how it gets used. But to get in a car and go down and take a stand for something, whether it's human trafficking or racial issues or gender equality or whatever it is, fight for freedom. Fight for freedom. Heard the story of Jackie Robinson, the first black player in major leagues. They told him, you're going to have to be tough. It's not going to be easy. You're in the major leagues, okay, but there's going to be problems. I can't change the world by myself. Branch Rickey told him, can you handle it? People said things, called them names, you know what it would be. So one day, they're in the Dodger Stadium there in Brooklyn, New York, and he made an error. Everyone makes an error. You can't be perfect the whole season. He's at second base and makes an error. 50,000 people booing, saying things, racial things. And Pee Wee Reese, the white shortstop, grew up in the South. This is not who he is naturally. Came over to second base, put his arm around him. Sorry. One of the most famous, iconic human gestures, U.S. history. Maybe you and I need to put our arm around somebody, give them some freedom. Someone's being put down in a church or a school or in your family or neighborhood somewhere or in our world, and we have to say, I'm going to fight for that. Write a check, write a letter to the opinion part of the newspaper, whatever it is, I have to fight for freedom. There are slaves today in the world. There's places you can write letters. I've written some letters. I don't know if it did any good. People speak up. Have to fight for freedom. I probably have talked here about the guy who learned to pray. Someone told him, I'll give you $500 if nothing happens, but you have to give me something if something happens. He prayed for Kenya every day for 6 months. Met the lady. He had an orphanage in Kenya. He lost the $500. He began to help that lady in an orphanage in Kenya. He went down there. They took him to a prison. He saw 24 political prisoners. He said, you should let them go. What are you doing this for? They didn't do anything wrong. State Department called 6 weeks later. Did you say something in Kenya? Yes, I did. They let them go today. Fight for freedom. You speak for freedom where you are. We did a women's ordination in my church. I wasn't happy to have to do that, but I couldn't sleep at night, knowing that 5 of us were treated one way and 2 were not, doing the same work. I thought someday my sons are going to ask me, what did you do, Dad? I thought, I better do the right thing. Wasn't easy. Fight for freedom. A couple great versions of the story. I've heard at least 2 of them. One of them's in a chicken soup book. Ocean stories. This 2 German guys were in Maui. I have gone diving at this place called Molokini. They went diving. They got assigned a lady dive instructor. They were not happy about that. How can we be taught by this lady? So they went down and diving. It came time to begin to go up, what they call your safety stop. You got to stop, for maybe 3 minutes down at 15 feet before you come all the way up. All of a sudden, the lady guides saw a manta ray. I got to see a manta ray down at the bottom, Molokini, when I dove there. So they saw this manta ray, but the manta ray had fishing line. It had some big fish hooks, 2-inch fish hooks, and it had been wrapped up in this fishing line, and its mouth could not feed, closed. She knew how to call manta ray. She'd learned, even through her regulator. Manta ray came. She put her foot up against the manta ray. It wiggled, but it came back. She pulled her knife out from her boot where we keep it. She took that knife, she put her foot up against that manta ray. She cut the first line. She could tell it winced, but the manta ray somehow knew that this person was helping her. Cut the second one. Allowed her to cut all 6 lines. Then she had to go around to the top side where those hooks were in. Pull those hooks out. The moment that last hook was out and that line was away from the mouth, that manta ray shot away. Go out to the ocean. 2 German guys are watching all this. Now the air is about out. You got to finish and get up. They started to go up. All of a sudden, the 2 German guys saw, and they pointed to the guide. And that manta ray came floating back and came right up in front of that lady and bobbed its head like a manta ray, thank you. Shot away back to the open ocean. When they came up and those 2 German guys came out of the water and there's everybody on the boat. You won't believe what we just saw. They were not sad with their lady dive instructor anymore. Who is around you in your life or in the world that you need to be the one to cut for freedom? God is a God of freedom. He's given us freedom. We got to give other people freedom. When it comes in front of us, maybe someone who is being made fun of at your Thanksgiving dinner. Someone's arguing about politics and someone is being hurt. Someone had to stand up and say, leave them alone. Set them free. I've spoken up at school board a few times. I've made some other phone calls asking for another chance. Hospital president wasn't treated well. I called and I said, we can afford to be fair. I don't agree with everything the hospital president does either, but we need to do this fairly. Give him a chance, have him speak. I made a call. You fight for freedom. God has set us free. We fight for freedom. But the little surprise that happens is that you, in fighting for other people's freedom, you set yourself free. I can tell you stories in my own life. But I'll tell you two that I told at the villa here the other day, and I'll tell them to you. Alexander Solzhenitsyn was the great Russian writer, became a Christian while he was in prison in the Gulag prison. He wrote about the Gulag archipelago in Siberia. Came here to America, anyway, great man, Nobel Prize. Another man he told about named Dr. Boris Kornfeld. He was a Jewish doctor, I think an atheist. His parents were activists, and he said some things he should not have said, and he ended up in the Gulag in Siberia. Hated everybody. Mad. But he's a doctor, so he had to take care of all the prisoners and the guards. He's the only doctor in the camp. One day he was in the recovery room with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, coming out of anesthetic and kind of in a fog, began to talk and mumble. Began to talk about Jesus and Christianity. Began to talk about the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven. Got to the phrase, forgive us, as we forgive those who sin against us. A few days later, the doctor's doing surgery on one of the guards, hates these guards. And he realizes that he has this guy open, that he could tie these stitches in such a way that those stitches would later come unraveled and he would die, but no one would know that he did it. He did it. Tied all those stitches loosely in a certain way. And all of a sudden, that little Lord's Prayer verse came back to him, our Father, forgive us as we forgive them. Forgive us. He looked at this hate that was in his heart, just couldn't face that, who he had become. Reached back in there and untied all those knots, tied them again correctly, sewed them up, set him free. It's a longer story. But from then on, he was free, follower of Jesus. He didn't care what he did. He didn't care who he talked to. He's free. Not going to live his life for these guards or this corrupt system. For God. For Jesus. Ended up dying. Bad part of the story. But he was free. Still in the Gulag. Still in prisons. Gates are closed. Still having to get up and live in the barracks with all the other prisoners. Physically prisoner. Spiritually free. Free in his soul. That's what Jesus said. I'll come to set you free. Still here. May not be able to do all that we'd like to do in our life, but we're free in our soul. It's freedom. It's freedom. I hope you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, it's something about Jesus comes in, forgives your sins, gives you a place in heaven, takes away the anger and poison in our life. Holding grudges on people, free. It's free. I'll tell you one more. Story I've told all over the world when I preach about the assurance of salvation. Maybe I've told it here, maybe you've heard it. About the two guys, they were Scottish chaplains in World War II. They got shot down. And one ended up with the prisoners of war with the Americans, one with the British, under the German camp. The Americans had a little radio, and at night they would sneak this radio out, and they would get the news of the war. And then they would have this Scottish chaplain go over to the fence, and he would just stand there and talk. And his friend on the other side would get the news and tell the British. The Germans understand some English, but they didn't understand the Gaelic, the Scottish, whatever that language was. Finally, the news came that the war was over. The Americans came running out, throwing their hats in the air, and we won the war. You can't kill us. We're going to go home. We're not going to die here. Scottish chaplain went over to the fence, gave the news over the fence, gave the news to the British. British came running out, throwing their hats in the air. We're going to go home. We won the war. Germans didn't know for 3 days. Finally, they got the news that the Germans had surrendered, and they walked out with the gates open. For 3 days, nothing had really changed. Still in prison, still the gates closed, still bad food, all the rest. But everything had changed in their heart. They got in the news, the war was over. Gonna go home. Freedom in the soul. I invite you to take that today. By the time you listen to this may be several weeks after 4th of July, but it's still true. We live in this country of freedom, and we celebrate it, and we give thanks to those who have gone before to give us this freedom. You go to the battlefield, thank you very much for the people who wrote Declaration of Independence, Constitution, all the others who have gone along the way, the wars that have been fought to defend our freedom. Jesus came down and died, paid for our sins, did all of that. It is finished for freedom. So don't let anybody take it away. If you begin to feel something encroaching, that you're doing stuff for other people, take it back. Don't do anything for other people. Do it for God. I tell people sometimes the pendulum swings, and they leave church and religion because of some grumpy people, some bossy people who told them what to do. And now they swing to no religion, no church. I said, you're still being controlled by what happened before. Get those people out of your head. Do what you do for Jesus, not because of anybody else. Don't react to them. Set yourself free in Jesus. Jesus said, I came to set you free. I came to set the captives free. Amen. You and I do our part to help other people be free. Free in the soul. And one of these days we will get to go. And the gates will open. And we will go free. Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. And the word began to go to all the slaves. Did you hear? Did you hear? Master Lincoln says we're free. We're going to be free. They're still fighting to fully give them freedom. Freedom. One of the greatest gifts in life. Don't let anybody take your freedom of your soul away. Jesus will give it to you. Sins are forgiven. We have a mansion we're coming to. Let prejudices go. Let grudges go. And be free. This is God Talk. See you next time.